Well, hello Crosskart fans, and welcome to another episode. Today we're going to be mocking up the rear axle and attaching it to the Crosskart. Now this is where we're going to decide ride height. Now unfortunately the exact ride height I want is directly with the bars with these tires on. So I've got the choice of going under the bar, over the bar, choosing a different tire to use, or reworking the whole thing completely. Now this first iteration is going to be a hardtail, and that is just because we're doing this as inexpensively as possible, and I'm curious to how this would do with just front shocks. There's a lot of go-karts out there that have no suspension or just front shocks, so I'm just curious. If it does just fine and performs well, then that's a huge win. If not, and this is the second iteration of this testing, is to put an articulated solid axle rear on it, to put some rear suspension on it, and then it'll be full suspension again. So hang in there, don't cancel your subscription because we're doing a hardtail. We'll see how this one works out. So today we got to find the ride height, and we got to figure out how we're going to mount this rear end. So let's get to work. All right, so let's take a look at our ride height as we have it now. Obviously the front end is sitting on a brick, so the front end is going to be just about 10 inches. And the back end sitting on top of the axle is 10 3/4. Now there is going to be a bit of sag just because it's on suspension. So when you get into it, the front end's going to drop because it's the only suspended part, about an inch, maybe an inch and a half. So when we build it, we're going to put a little bit of a rake on it. So let's reconfigure this. All right, so this is what I've settled on for the time being. The front is 9 3/4, and the back is right at 9 inches. So that'll give room for a little bit of sag, and we've got plenty of ground clearance. All right, so let's take a look at this rear end and get it set up. Right now I have 110 hub. This shaft is just a 1 1/4 inch keyed shaft. Now it's nice and wide, so it's going to fit the dimensions of our cart perfectly. All this stuff I got from Go Power Sports. If you want the details on each specific part, I have a components list. Check the description for details of that. I've got a 2-piece sprocket. This is all 420 chain because we're using a Predator. However, it's set up all wrong right now. The sprocket is going to go outboard of the frame. The brake disc needs to be flipped, and it's going to go outboard of the frame. This is going to be attached to the frame, and this we're going to mock up something for. So we have to take all this apart and get it set up. Look at how clean this rear end is. Oh, it came out so nice. It's going to be easy to put a skid plate underneath to protect that sprocket and brake. It's going to be super easy to weld up on that centerpiece. The brake is going to be super easy to mount. This is actually a really slick setup. I'm pretty happy about it. I ended up lowering it down. It's got maybe 7.5 inches of clearance. It doesn't look like much until you get down low. Yerf dogs have 5.5 inches of clearance. So that's kind of my min for this. The wheelbase is 12 inches shorter than a Yerf dog. This one might turn out to be the same depending on where I put that rear axle. But when they're low, they look pretty slick. I'm not gonna lie. Can't get a wide enough view here, but yeah, I like it when they're low like that. And 7 inches of clearance should be plenty for anywhere we're gonna take this. We're not going to be mountain climbing or rock crawling with this. It's a speed cart meant for drifting and driving a little crazy in your backyard. All right, let's get this welded up or tacked up. All right, so this is the point where you want to put your axle forward or back, however far you want it. If you want a shorter wheelbase for turning or longer wheelbase for looks or for alignment, this is your chance to do that. Make it square to the front, so that when you're driving, you're not riding all crooked. So next step is to just align these and put in some tacks to hold these in place. Now you can box these in to make sure that the brackets are aligned up and down, left and right. I marked the center of the axle itself so that I'm not riding, one wheel longer than the other. I measured the ends to make sure the wheels are at the same position, and I locked all the keys in place. So all this is set up. The only things that are loose are these. So I'm going to check it a little more, double check my measurements, get these tacked in, and start building this up to carry this. All right, let's check out the tacks, see how they held up. Oh, they're flexy, that's for sure. Should we? Should we? Why not? Nice. That's pretty good. Pretty good. We're very close to a roller now. All right, so now we're going to shift our focus back to the front end. We want this aligned exactly, I mean exactly where we want it, so we can mount these shocks. Now everything's tacked. You guys know how I do it. I tack everything until I'm absolutely sure I love it. We're going to level the chassis, which will make these level, which will make the rear end level. We will mount these shocks, and I'm just going to use the incline of the lower A-arm attachment bars on this brick to just ride it up and down until I find that exact sweet spot. All right, so we got the rear end mounted. Everything's tight in there. These pillow blocks are tacked in. Now we've got these outboard pillow blocks. These are to triangulate the rear so that it doesn't flex. Now we have two more areas of motion we need to stop, and that's going to be lateral and vertical. Obviously this is going to flex a little bit as it sits now, and it'll probably bend the axle. This being a solid axle, it's going to take a lot of abuse. So having 4 pillow blocks lined up is going to keep the axle from bending, and it's going to give you more authority to the back wheels. So let's get that fabbed up. All right, so here's the setup. I've got some scrap pieces of 1.25 inch. It doesn't matter the wall size. And I matched this angle right here. The reason I did it on this flat part and not the curve is because this is now adjustable on this whole assembly right here to get it lined up exactly where we want it on our outboard pillow block. Now where I'm going to put it on this pillow block, I've got my handy jack here holding it in position. There's 2 good weldable corners. So I'm basically taking it and putting it on one of those weldable corners at the top, and then we're going to have a forward going to the other weldable surface. It looks like these are going to be the same exact angle. That's crazy awesome. And also it's on that straight piece, so this is going to be adjustable too, however you want it to look or feel, or how much strength you want. The one going front to back is going to be for angle deflection of the axle. It's going to hold it in place nice and straight so it tracks. And then this one is obviously going to be for up and down. Those wheels are going to be pushing against each other. This is going to lock everything in. So I have enough of a scratch piece. I can sight it in where I want it and just lop it off. All right, so that was it. That was super simple. What I did is I just measured one side to about where I thought it would be. I cut it off. I test fit it. I checked the angles. And then I cut the other one to the exact length because this is all squared and triangulated and should match left to right. The first one's turned out to be the same angle, if you don't mind a tiny bit, maybe 1/16 or an 1/8 inch of gap welding. I don't mind that at all. Now, you can see how the tubes are lined up on these pillow blocks. I'm okay with this. I'm gonna just weld in that far side nice and great. There's not gonna be any pulling action on this. Nothing's gonna be trying to pull this off of this tube. All the pressure is going to be up on it. As this wheel goes and hits the ground, it's gonna push up into this main chassis. As this one pushes down, it's gonna push up into the main chassis. There's gonna be no transfer across the axle trying to pull this out. So this should be perfectly safe. Same with front and back, the twisting of it. If this wheel is trying to push forward, this is going to stop it. There's not going to be any transfer across the axle because of how it's triangulated in. So now I'm just going to tack this in. One thing I'm going to pay strict attention to are these angles here. I'm going to get my angle finder. I'm going to match these two pillow block bearings for the angle or the rotation they're at before I tack these in. I'm going to match it side to side. That's going to make sure everything is level and square to each other across the center. And I think it looks pretty cool. I thought it would look crazy with these long bars on it, but it matches really well. I think if we'd run up to this bend, it would have been a little too long, but I think this length works really well for how we're setting this up. And I don't know if you can tell, but we're kind of predetermining swing arm angles for when we put suspension on this. Alright, so the rear's all done and I've got some time left in the day. I've got a couple hours left. I can work on this. So I thought I would mock up the engine mounting, and it looks like it's going to be really, really easy. I do have this sitting on a motor plate, but because the CVT, this 40 series, dips down below the motor, I had to lift it up about 1.5 inches. It's about 1.75 inches of clearance, unfortunately, which means it's going to run into these bars if we use leftover 1.5 inch square tubing. So all I did is run it to a space to allow it to drop below the main floor. That way I don't have to lift it up any higher, keep the CG nice and low. The vertical CG of this is only, I don't know, 14 inches off the ground, and our width is way more than half of that. So we're not going to have the tendency to roll over. It's not going to be top heavy. The track width of this is about 60 inches. So anything above 30 inches of vertical CG is where you're getting into that red zone. Obviously, the lower you can keep it, the better it's going to track. Now, all this weight being in the back means this sucker is going to be a handful if we have enough power going to the back wheels, which I like. That's the kind of stuff I like. So I've got the motor in place now. The biggest thing here is to make the engine mount and engine completely straight and completely square. That's gonna lengthen your chain life, and it's gonna keep you from skipping chains. And I bought a pre-stretched chain. Now it's totally worth it. It's about double the price of your average chain. So instead of it being $15, it was like $35. And the headache it saves you in the end is huge. So what I'm going to do now is just mark I'm going to center the motor. This sprocket is adjustable, so I'm going to center the motor so it looks good and so it's straight down the middle. I'm going to mark on the chassis the bolt holes. I'm going to double check that measurement, and then on the plate I'm going to run some 1.5 inch square tubing for that plate to sit on, and it should be easy to bolt in. We'll have plenty of clearance from the bottom. Let's get this done. we go. Engine mounted. That was way easier than I thought it would be. It only took about an hour, and that's because I cut my own custom spacer for the front clutch. I just used some leftover 1.25" thick wall. Wow, that went in very quickly and very easily. I like it. I like it a lot. The chain adjustment is going to be on the engine. That mounting plate made it a lot easier for sure. There we go. So I've still got like an hour left because that didn't take long. So let's mount the seat so we can sit in this sucker. All right, so I put the forward and the aft or rear seat support bars in. Now this is a cross member, so it fits tightly between these, and since it's cross member, it's adjustable. This is the same width uniformly up and down. So this bar can move forward or back to fit your seat, and if you want, you can make 2 of these. Just use the same templates or print out some more cut wrappers, and then you can have as many cross members as you want to help mount your seat. Now most seats that I've found need you to mount them at a certain angle. Being tilted back gives you more headroom, and it kind of locks your butt in. So as you're hitting the brakes, the seat is actually going to hold you in rather than just sliding forward and back and relying on your harness. So I've kind of pre-positioned this where I want it. This seat did not come with brackets. This is the seat we're mounting right here. It's a Jags just plastic seat. It was like 30 bucks, just ridiculous. And it has 6 bolts on the bottom. Now, I'm not going to be able to fully mount this today because I don't have these bolts, and it didn't come with them. Boo. So I got to go to the hardware store, but that doesn't mean I can't get everything set up and ready. So I've got these 2 bars in position, and to maximize headroom, I'm going to run my mounts from the bottom of this. I'm going to go and pick up some 1/4" thick steel. Maybe I'll go with 3/16. I don't know. 3/16 gives just a tiny bit of spring. Since this is a solid axle, rigid rear, a little bit of suspension might not be so bad, but I don't want the welds to break. So I'll have to do some research on suspended welding. We could put a bracket in here to help support it, a little gusset if you will. Maybe I'll do that, I don't know. Regardless, I only have this one piece and I need at least 2. Yeah, I'll weld it in like that, and I will just put the seat in here so you can see what we're looking at. There we go, something like that. That's a little more tilt than I want. Now, since this seat is a plastic seat, it's really thick on the bottom. Most racing seats are pretty thin on the bottom to give you more headroom and get you down in the car. Well, this is not a $200 racing seat. So I'm kind of sinking it under into the chassis to utilize that extra 1.25" of space. And you can see, that's going to give a ton of headroom. Now this seat is obviously made to hold an average sized person with their head resting right here and their shoulders right here. You can see that's a ton of room. So you can check your driver position. Just hop in there. And you can fine tune this to however you want. You can adjust the angle, you can adjust the spacing, just leave clearance for your engine. And since our engine is also our chain tensioner, we're going to measure that mounting plate to see how much adjustment we have and then keep the seat that same distance away. Now on this Predator motor, we can pull the gas tank off and get a ton more room, but this is actually pretty comfortable, and I've got a ton of room in here. Even with a helmet on, I don't even think I'd hit these bars. So this is going to turn out fantastic. So I'm going to run to the hardware store, get everything I need, and we will finish this up and do even more on the next episode. I will see you guys later.